I just dropped in and did my verse, and at the end, the third verse, when I got the master from Joey.
Look me in the eye, said I raise my hand.
At 71, Ronnie Dunn has just surprised fans by publicly speaking out for the first time about everything that happened behind the stage lights, from interrupted concerts to bold decisions that once shaped Brooks and Dunn. Every detail has now been confirmed by the man himself. This is not a career summary, but rather a confession after 3 decades of silence. And with what has just been revealed, the public may never see Ronnie the same way again. Ronnie Dunn was born on June 1, 1953 in Coleman, Texas, to a traditional Southern working-class family. His father, Jesse Eugene Dunn, was both a truck driver and a musician in small local bands. His mother, Gladys Inez, was a devoted Baptist, raised in poverty and constantly on the move. Ronnie had an unsettled childhood, attending 13 different schools across Texas, Arkansas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. From an early age, he was familiar with standing between 2 worlds, one of religious faith, the other of secular music he secretly listened to on the radio and his father's vinyl records. Unlike many singers who came out of Nashville or received formal training, Ronnie approached music in a practical and instinctive way. He played saxophone in his high school band in El Dorado, Arkansas, learned guitar from friends, and arranged harmonies himself while performing in church. Instead of studios or art schools, the first places where he trained his voice were Baptist halls and bars in Tulsa. This musical foundation gave his voice a tone that was both mellow and gritty. A sound instantly recognizable among hundreds of other voices in the 1980s. Although he was deeply involved in religion from a young age, Ronnie did not follow the ministry path expected by his family. After being expelled from Hardin-Simmons University's theology program for playing live music at a bar, he switched to studying psychology at Abilene Christian University and graduated in 1975. Still, office life was never a real option. He soon returned to Tulsa and began an anonymous journey performing at small country venues like Tulsa City Limits, playing bass and singing lead in local bands while working as an FM radio DJ to cover his expenses. From 1983 to 1984, Ronnie released 2 solo singles, It's Written All Over Your Face and She Put the Sad in All His Songs, both peaking only at number 59 on the Billboard charts. Though commercially unsuccessful, this period was when he developed his emotionally driven and visually rich songwriting style, a signature that would define his future career. Critics at the time described him as a powerful voice that hadn't found its moment. Still, Ronnie didn't give up. He continued performing night after night, believing that if someone noticed him, the path would open. In 1989, the turning point came when Ronnie entered the Marlboro Talent Search, a nationwide music talent competition. He won the local round and then the entire Southern Regional, earning a demo recording session in Nashville. It was there that producer Tim Dubois of Arista Records noticed Ronnie. But instead of offering a solo contract, Dubois made a surprising suggestion: pair Ronnie with another songwriter named Kix Brooks for a duet project. At first, the two had no personal connection. Ronnie came from a moody honky-tonk background, while Kix was outgoing and had written several hits for other artists. They had no clear common ground, but when they recorded their first demo together, the entire Arista executive team stood up and applauded at the end of the session. 1 month later, the name Brooks and Dunn was officially born. From being a solo artist who had never landed a top 40 hit, Ronnie suddenly found himself part of a major high-stakes project, marking a major turning point in his journey. A contract full of turning points. When Brand New Man was released in August 1991, Brooks and Dunn quickly moved beyond the boundaries of an experimental project. The album achieved 6x platinum certification within just a few years, featuring hits like My Next Broken Heart, Neon Moon, and especially Boot Scootin' Boogie, a track that breathed new life into country music by bringing line dancing back to stages across America. Ronnie Dunn, the lead vocalist on most of the hits, immediately became a symbol of contemporary country infused with traditional spirit. From the very beginning, though, the operational structure of Brooks and Dunn was unlike that of typical bands. They weren't formed through a friendship or years of performing together. Instead, they were paired by a record label. Ronnie once shared, "We were put together by a business decision. There wasn't much binding us outside of the music." This truth surprised many when they learned that even after nearly 2 decades of performing together, the two spent little time off-stage as friends. From 1991 to 2009, Brooks and Dunn released 12 studio albums, earned 20 numbered #1 hits on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, and sold over 30 million records. Hits like My Maria, 1996, and Ain't Nothing 'Bout You, 2001, topped the year-end charts. The duo consistently dominated awards, shows 30 ACM Awards, 18 CMA Awards, and 2 Grammy Awards, becoming the only duo in country music history to be honored every year for nearly 2 decades. In 2019, they were officially inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Ronnie played a central role in most of the recordings, with his distinctive voice carrying deep emotional resonance. Meanwhile, Kix Brooks energized the stage and guided their performance strategy. This complementarity fueled artistic success, but also created personal distance. We had different lifestyles, different mindsets, even different songwriting approaches, Ronnie said in a 2010 interview. These silent tensions became harder to manage as they entered the 2000s. While there was never any public conflict, internal signs of division began to show. Dividing up songs and managing creative control became sensitive issues. Kix once said, "We worked ourselves too hard for too long without stopping. It was time to pause and understand who we are." Ronnie, on the other hand, admitted that he no longer felt the creative freedom he had in the early days. In 2009, their breakup was officially announced. In September 2010, Brooks and Dunn held their final concert at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, titled The Last Rodeo. The performance wasn't just a farewell, it was a moment that brought thousands of fans to tears. Ronnie said simply, "This isn't a permanent end, but it's definitely a milestone." After the split, he began pursuing a solo path, reclaiming his individual voice after nearly 20 years inside a structured performance duo. And it was only when he stepped away from the spotlight they shared that he could begin to ask himself, "What do I truly want from music?" A turbulent solo journey. In early 2011, Ronnie Dunn released his self-titled debut solo album, Ronnie Dunn, through Arista Nashville. The album immediately debuted at numbered 1 on the Top Country Albums chart and reached numbered 5 on the Billboard 200, selling 45,000 copies in its first week. The lead single, Bleed Red, climbed to number 10 and was praised by critics for its powerful message and modern melody that broke away from traditional molds. Though his solo career began with promise, Ronnie soon ran into limitations imposed by the label. He aimed to pursue a more personal songwriting direction, but Arista pushed for more commercially driven content. This quiet conflict lasted through the end of 2011 when Ronnie chose to end the contract and launch his own independent label, Little Will E Records, in early 2012. It was a bold move, but one that gave Ronnie full creative control over his music and career direction. Between 2012 and 2016, Ronnie released 2 more albums, Peace, Love and Country Music, and Tattooed Heart, Singles like Cost of Livin' and Let the Cowboy Rock didn't dominate the charts, peaking at number 19 and number 31 respectively, but they still earned positive reception from loyal listeners. Tattooed Heart was a collaboration with Nash Icon, where Ronnie remarked, "I'm proud to be part of a new model where artists aren't boxed in by the market." While no longer dominating the charts, Ronnie remained a sought-after performer at major events, including national-level country festivals. His voice, seasoned and full of life experience, resonated with mature audiences looking for music with depth rather than catchiness. In 2020, he released Redone, an album of 24 cover songs featuring classic rock and country hits. It was seen as both a clever tribute and a showcase of Ronnie's interpretive skill. Though it didn't break into the top 10, the album helped him maintain a steady presence on streaming platforms. Ronnie also expanded into music business operations, managing his own label and scouting young talent. At the same time, he developed a personal photography project called the Lensman Project, a passion that also served charitable purposes. A portion of the photo sales proceeds was donated to the American Cancer Society, following a health crisis his daughter experienced in 2021. Alongside his music activities, Ronnie frequently posted short reflections on social media about songwriting, personal lifestyle, and artistic philosophy. One standout quote from his personal page reads, "We have to remind ourselves that before we're singers, we're songwriters. And as songwriters, we shouldn't let the market steer our emotions." Still, the solo journey wasn't entirely smooth. The lack of competitive pressure allowed Ronnie to preserve his authenticity, but it also meant fewer appearances in mainstream media. Compared to his Brooks and Dunn days, his newer projects didn't attract massive followings. Even so, his loyal fan base, particularly those who grew up during the 1990s country wave, continued to see him as a voice of resilience and conviction. From 2011 to 2019, Ronnie didn't produce a single top 5 hit, but he openly admitted, "I'm not chasing trends, I'm just trying to keep the truth in every lyric." Just when it seemed he would settle into his solo path, Ronnie Dunn received an invitation he couldn't turn down. And this time, it wasn't an experiment. It was a true reunion, opening a new chapter for an entire generation of fans. The reunion after the split. In late 2014, Ronnie Dunn received an offer from the organizers at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas. Would he consider reuniting with Kix Brooks to perform alongside Reba McEntire? This wasn't a new idea. For years, fans and event promoters had frequently mentioned the possibility of a reunion. But this time, there was something different. Neither Ronnie nor Kix felt the pressure to be who they once were, no longer chasing chart dominance or award trophies. They returned to the Las Vegas stage in 2015 with a newfound sense of freedom. The audience response exceeded all expectations. The first show sold out. More dates were added continuously. Nashville media dubbed it a comeback without a formula, because the duo needed no flashy PR campaign or new songs to draw attention. What they brought back was what the public had waited years for: Ronnie's voice and Kix's stage energy. That chemistry, once fractured, had become something irreplaceable. In 2019, Brooks and Dunn released Reboot, an album that reimagined their classic hits with the help of younger artists such as Luke Combs, Kane Brown, Midland, and Casey Musgraves. The album debuted at #1 on the Top Country Albums chart. Tracks like My Maria and Neon Moon were refreshed, but retained their original soul. In an interview with People, Ronnie said, "I didn't want these young artists to sing like us. I wanted them to bring themselves into the song. That's what creates something new." Building on its success, Reboot 2 was released in 2024, this time featuring more genre-bending names like Jelly Roll, Lazzy Hale, and Morgan Wade, Ronnie affirmed, "I don't box in country music. If the music has emotion and tells a story, it deserves to be heard." This open-minded approach helped him shed the image of a traditionalist, turning him into a bridge between two generations. Alongside new releases, Brooks and Dunn announced the Neon Moon Tour 2025, a nationwide tour covering nearly 30 cities across the U.S. and Canada, with Morgan Wallen joining for major stops like Miami, Seattle, and Toronto. Even in his 70s, Ronnie remained the vocal centerpiece during sets that lasted over 90 minutes. Songs like Boot Scootin' Boogie, Red Dirt Road, and Believe continued to ring out with the same power as in the early days. The tour included several highlights on June 5, 2025. Ronnie and Kix confirmed a performance at CMA Fest in Nashville, widely regarded as the heart of modern country music. It marked their first return to the festival's main stage in over a decade, with a performance unconstrained by time limits. Beyond performing, Ronnie continued to expand his efforts outside of music. His label, Little Will E Records, supported independent artists in producing and distributing their work. In philanthropy, his Lensman project continued selling fine art photography captured by Ronnie himself, raising funds for the American Cancer Society. According to Country Evolution, as of early 2025, Ronnie had donated over $350,000 through this initiative. Amid the packed schedule and waves of acclaim, it seemed as though Ronnie Dunn had entered the most stable phase of his career. But just then, his body began to speak up, and this time, he could no longer pretend he was still the same as when it all began. A shocking confession. In December 2024, during a short family vacation in Colorado, Ronnie Dunn unexpectedly suffered an injury while skiing. Medical tests revealed he needed surgery to replace his right knee joint, a problem that had lingered for years but was ignored due to an intense touring schedule. The surgery was performed later that month, followed by an 8-week mandatory recovery period. During this time, all of Ronnie's activities were suspended, including rehearsals for the upcoming Neon Moon Tour 2025. When the tour kicked off in March 2025, Ronnie still returned to the stage alongside Kix Brooks, appearing largely unchanged. Behind-the-scenes videos posted on Instagram showed him wearing a knee support device throughout rehearsals. A week before the Rodeo Houston event, Ronnie wrote, "I've never let my body decide whether I can sing or not, but this time, I'll let it speak first before I do." On the night of April 3, 2025, during a show at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Ronnie unexpectedly walked off stage midway through the song Boot Scootin' Boogie. At first, the audience thought it was part of the act, but when Kix Brooks finished the set alone and announced the show would pause, concern quickly spread across social media. The next morning, the duo's team confirmed Ronnie was suffering from acute laryngitis with flu complications. According to a press release from USA Today, he had already shown signs of fever, hoarseness, and fatigue during the 2 previous shows, but didn't want to cancel. The Indianapolis incident became a major talking point in the media. Outlets like Saving Country Music and Taste of Country reported extensively on Ronnie's condition and quoted the technical crew saying, "It was the first time in nearly 30 years Ronnie couldn't finish a song on stage." Though he recovered quickly and resumed performing at Rodeo Houston, signs of exhaustion were clearly visible in the video clips that followed. May's concert schedule saw 2 shows at Fenway Park in Boston canceled at the last minute. Although the official reason was listed as unforeseen circumstances, fans understood this was likely a health protective measure after weeks of exertion. On social media, many responded with compassion rather than frustration. One widely shared comment read, "Ronnie doesn't need to prove anything anymore. He's already given us more than enough." At the rehearsal for CMA Fest on June 5, 2025, Ronnie appeared more relaxed than usual. A backstage crew member told Nashville Scene he wasn't talking about set lists or lighting effects. He just said, "I'll sing as much as I can, and the rest is up to the audience to feel." This return was seen as an unspoken statement that even if not in peak physical shape, Ronnie still considered the stage inseparable from his life. Though he hasn't officially announced the end of his touring days, Ronnie has started speaking more openly about the limits of age in recent interviews. On Country Countdown USA, he shared, "I think we're in the final years where we can perform at this scale, but if I had to choose again, I'd still sing until I couldn't anymore." That statement wasn't a farewell, but it didn't hide the truth. Ronnie is preparing for a new phase, from big stages to more intimate settings, perhaps in recording studios or behind the camera lens, when music becomes a part of life and the body begins to set its limits. Ronnie Dunn's choice is no longer about staying famous, but about continuing to exist in the way he believes is truest to himself. If you've ever heard Ronnie sing Neon Moon in a crowd of thousands, or simply paused for a moment because of one of his lyrics, leave a comment below. Ronnie's music doesn't need to be flashy. It endures because it touches something real. Share your memories, your feelings, or the moments you've connected with Brooks and Dunn. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay with us for more honest, heartfelt music stories like this one.